Trump casts blame on both sides for deadly violence in Virginia. New York, Reuters. U.S. President Donald Trump unabashedly insisted on Tuesday that both left and right-wing extremists resorted to violence during a weekend rally by white nationalists in Virginia, and that some present were peacefully protesting plans to remove a Confederate monument when the upheaval began. Trump, taking questions from reporters in the lobby of Trump Tower in New York, reverted to his initial comments blaming many sides for Saturday's violence in Charlottesville, a day after bowing to pressure to explicitly condemn the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. They came at each other with clubs. "It was a horrible thing to watch," Trump said during what was supposed to be an announcement about his administration's infrastructure policy. He also said left-wing protesters came violently attacking the other group. Trump has faced a storm of criticism from Democrats and members of his own Republican Party over his response to the deadly violence, which erupted after white nationalists converged in Charlottesville for a Unite the Right rally in protest of plans to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee, commander of the pro-slavery Confederate Army during the U.S. Civil War. Many of the rally participants were seen carrying firearms, sticks and shields. Some also wore helmets. Counter-protesters likewise came equipped with sticks, helmets and shields. The two sides clashed and scattered street brawls before a car plowed into the rally opponents, killing one woman and injuring 19 others. A 20-year-old Ohio man, James Fields, said to have harbored Nazi sympathies, was charged with murder. 2 state police officers also were killed that day in the fiery crash of the helicopter they were flying in as part of crowd control operations. Addressing the melee for the first time on Saturday, Trump denounced hatred and violence on many sides. The comment drew sharp criticism across the political spectrum for not explicitly condemning the white nationalists whose presence in the southern college town was widely seen as having provoked the unrest. Critics said Trump's remarks then belied his reluctance to alienate extreme right-wing organizations, whose followers constitute a devoted segment of his political base despite his disavowal of them, yielding 2 days later to a mounting political furor over his initial response. Trump delivered a follow-up message expressly referring to the KKK, neo-Nazis and white supremacists and other hate groups as repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. Trump's detractors dismissed his revised statements as too little too late, but his remarks on Tuesday casting blame on both sides and suggesting that not everyone attending the rally was a white supremacist newly inflamed the controversy. Former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke immediately applauded Trump on Twitter. "Thank you President Trump for your honesty and courage to tell the truth about Charlottesville and condemn the leftist terrorists in BLM, Antifa," Duke wrote, referring to Black Lives Matter, BLM, and anti-fascists. Democrats seized on Trump's latest words as evidence that Trump sees white nationalists and those protesting against them as morally equivalent. By saying he is not taking sides, Donald Trump clearly is. Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer of New York said, "When David Duke and white supremacists share your remarks, you're doing it very, very wrong." In a similar vein, Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, a Democrat, said Trump's characterization of the violence missed the mark. "Neo-Nazis, Klansmen and white supremacists came to Charlottesville heavily armed, spewing hatred and looking for a fight. One of them murdered a young woman in an act of domestic terrorism, and 2 of our finest officers were killed in a tragic accident while serving to protect this community." This was not both sides, he said. Richard Trumka, president of the AFL-CIO Labor Federation representing 12.5 million workers, became the latest member of Trump's advisory American Manufacturing Council to resign in protest, saying, "We cannot sit on a council for a president who tolerates bigotry and domestic terrorism," Trumka said. President Trump's remarks today repudiate his forced remarks yesterday about the KKK and neo-Nazis. 3 other members of the council, the chief executives of pharmaceutical maker Merck and CO Incorporated, sportswear company Under Armour Incorporated and computer chip maker Intel Corp., resigned on Monday. In his remarks on Tuesday, Trump also sympathized with protesters seeking to keep Lee's statue in place but offered no equivalent remarks for those who favored its removal. "You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of a very, very important statue and renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name, Trump said. Trump also grouped former presidents George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, two of the nation's founding fathers, together with Confederate leaders such as Lee, Jefferson Davis and Stonewall Jackson, who fought to separate Southern states from the Union, noting that all were slave owners. Was George Washington a slave owner? Will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? Because he was a major slave owner, Trump said. On Tuesday, Trump explained his initial restrained response by saying, "The statement I made on Saturday, the first statement, was a fine statement. But you don't make statements that direct unless you know the facts. It takes a little while to get the facts." He said that while neo-Nazis and white nationalists should be condemned totally, Trump said protesters in the other group also had troublemakers. And you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You got a lot of bad people in the other group too.